Punk rock superstars Green Day are headed to Target Field Saturday, August 17th. Don't miss out as they celebrate 20 years of their American Idiot album and 30 years of their Dookie album, playing both in their entirety when they take the stage. Tickets still available. For full details and to get your tickets, head over to KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Speaking of American Idiots, it's Nordo here, filling in for PA. If PA was Gladys Knight, you can consider me one of the Pips, I suppose, filling in final hour 9 to noon. And you know what, Brett, to heck with trying to monetize a podcast. How about we sponsor a segment called Covenant Cleanup, in which we're dumb, we make mistakes on a daily basis. Something so simple as saying the rubber match. It's not a rubber match. No, it's not. It's when you lose both by a combined score of 17-2, it's not a rubber match. And I made that error. And that's embarrassing. And I received several text messages noting that Meat Sauce may have made that mistake this morning during the power trip. So that makes me feel even worse. Hopefully to cheer me up and everyone else, Dan Hayes of The Athletic joins me now at Dan Hayes MLB via X. Follows the Minnesota Twins, writes about the Minnesota Twins for theathletic.com. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good, but I don't think I'm going to cheer anybody up. Yeah, I apologize for that.
No, and you know what? That's not your job. Your job is to cover the team, and you do a damn good job of it. And that is indeed where I wanted to start, because yesterday the Twins made a move before the deadline. Trevor Richards, 31-year-old, made his debut in 2018. He's played for, this will be his fifth team. But I've seen him referred to as a low leverage reliever that comes to the Minnesota Twins in exchange for a low end prospect in Jay Harry going to Toronto. Your thoughts on the move?
I mean, look, it's a nice piece and it'll help round out the roster. I think he can help. They think he can pitch against lefties. He's got reverse splits. His changeup is nasty. So in that regard, it's a decent piece, but I mean, I think that the players in the clubhouse were expecting a big move, and I think that fans certainly were expecting. Okay, look, actually, let's put it in the context. I don't know that a big move was to be had right now, because we look at who was traded during this deadline. It's not like we're talking about superstars getting moved. There was very little in the way of impact talent move. There was a lot of number 3 and 4 pitchers moved for absurd prices. And that is not to really defend the Twins for not making the move. I just think that they saw what was out there and they realized that they'd be mortgaging their future. You know, Walker Jenkins, Brooks Lee, and Emmanuel Rodriguez were the big asks. And when you're talking about 10 starts of, say, Yusei Kikuchi, that's the stupid price, to be honest. I wouldn't do that either. I think this was lost in the off season more than lost yesterday. It basically kind of comes to fruition yesterday because players expected some help and they really didn't get much. But you can't. It really began 9 months ago is what was more when the problem started, and it just surfaces with the deadline because the deadline provides the platform. But this was a thing that they should have handled so much longer ago.
Well, I'm glad you went that way, Dan, and you know this. You've been with the Twins, following the Twins long enough now. Regardless of what you're going to say to my next question, you will be referred to by some as a Polad pocket protector. So you know that. But let me ask you this, because I mostly agree with you. Is this a situation with this team as time goes on that is it a bigger problem, the philosophy of this team as it pertains to making moves, spending money in certain spots? Is the biggest problem the philosophy, or is it the messaging and how they communicate that to the fans?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, because look, they have spent money before, and they've done it recently. They changed a lot of the ways they went about things by signing Byron Buxton to an extension, by signing Carlos Correa for $200 million, things that nobody around here has really seen. I know the Joe Mauer contract was there, but if you didn't sign Joe Mauer back then, you might as well fold up the franchise and walked away at that point. They have spent money. I don't know if this is a temporary thing. It would not be good if it's a permanent thing. There's no question, because I think when you look at this team coming out last year, this is a team to build around. That was a really exciting run. Should you have re-signed Sonny Gray? I don't think that would have been realistic, honestly. He was getting paid way too much for a guy who the last year or two, you don't know what you're going to get. I think this year you knew what you were going to maybe get, but also his first year with the Twins, he had went on the IL 3 times. And he's never had the healthiest track record. So I could see why they didn't sign him, but that doesn't excuse not signing another starter. And, I don't know that I think what Derek Falvey and Thad Levine did in the offseason was one of the most creative jobs I've ever seen to make do with what they had. I mean, they tried to piece together the rotation as best they could. And that's when you lost $27 million off payroll. There was really no way to do that. And yet there had been like $10 million more bucks to spend. Maybe you sign Eric Fetty in the offseason and you're not in this position in the first place. And the fact that despite the ingredients in place for this great team, payroll was just going to be slashed. That was going to be it. There was little wiggle room and financial constraints. That's troubling. There's no question about that. I mean, it's hard to see how, if that's a permanent state, how that's good for the franchise moving forward. If that's a temporary thing because of businesses, the TV deal absolutely fell apart, and I'm not going to go on and speculate how much they lost, but I know it was a great deal, and I know it was more than what the Rangers and the Guardians lost. And, everybody assumes the Twins had the same thing that they got, where I believe there were 15% cuts.
Yep.
The Twins was more than that. There's no question that the Twins was more than that. I don't know how much, but it wouldn't shock me if the payroll reduction was in line with that. But the TV situation is not going to get any better. This was already the worst TV deal in baseball as it was. $54 million was bottom of the barrel in baseball. And if it's in fact in that $30 million range now, unless MLB comes up with something, it's going to get worse. I mean, if the team goes to streaming and it's direct to customer, the Padres have 40,000 subscribers right now. Do the math, 40,000 at like $120 a year. The Padres are making about $4 million off their rights right now. The Padres used to get $70 million annually from their TV deal. So this is sort of systemic in baseball, and it really impacts the Twins at the wrong time. I'm hoping for the Twins fans' sake it's temporary. I don't know, though. I really don't know where this takes baseball and its financial future. And the fact that, $10 million wasn't there to maybe go after Eric Fetty, who signed a 2-year, $15 million with the deal with the White Sox. And, boy, did they make out on that. The Twins could have signed him at the same time for the same price, and they'd be in a lot better shape right now. They didn't have that money, and yesterday and the day before they faced unbearable prices to try and trade for guys, and you would have been mortgaging your future. So they were in a no-win position, and it leaves the clubhouse just, totally unsatisfied.
Yeah, I bet it does. And I'm curious about that. How do you think that relationship exists? I mean, it feels like if you're Derek Falvey, if you give him X amount of money, he's going to spend up to that line, right? If you told him you could spend like the Dodgers, he would go out and try to spend like the Dodgers. So, the balance, like Derek Falvey and Thad Levine trying to work through that. I'm interested in how that dynamic exists, trying to present some of this stuff to ownership and trying to get the right answers that ultimately fit with the vision of this team.
Well, yeah, look at the Jorge Polanco trade, right? He was going to make $10 million bucks. They trade him to Seattle. Desclafani comes back to the Twins for $4 million. He's due to make 12, but the Giants and the Mariners paid $8 million of it because of all the injury concerns that were there. Justin Topa, who actually may get back this weekend, is set. I think he's earning just a little bit over $1 million bucks. So there's $5 million. And what did they do? They went out and spent $5 million bucks on Carlos Santana. So they basically took the opportunity to trade Polanco and turn it potentially into 3 pieces. I think there was a realization on the baseball side that this is a team that wasn't very far off from being a real competitor. I mean, look at the run last year. They figured out a way to get over Houston in that game 3. That first inning was so damaging when Sonny Gray gave up the 4 runs, and I think that really deflated the team. And Houston goes on to beat them in 4. But if the Twins had gotten through that and found a way to win that series, that bullpen was nasty. There was so much about it to like in a AL that was, look at Texas, like how hot they got, but Texas had really no bullpen. Texas really had no starting staff. There were two guys. It was Jordan Montgomery and Eovaldi who were incredible, but beyond that, there were Max Scherzer, glued together essentially, and they won the World Series. I think the Twins realized how close they were last year and knew going into this season that they were just as in good a shape with a lot of young talent ready to be realized at the major league level, like Simeon Woods Richardson, David Festa, all those guys, Brooks Lee, that they were going to get here and be able to help, that they knew this was a team to go around. They did everything they could in the offseason. They were just handicapped by that payroll slash, and fans have responded in kind. I mean, this might be the first time a team that won a division loses in payroll. They're on pace for 80,000 fewer fans. And a couple good weekends could get them there, and they might end up making the same amount of attendance as last year. But, it's not been a fun situation for sure.
Well, that's been, and this is Dan Hayes of The Athletic at Dan Hayes MLB. I mean, the TV, I don't want to entirely blame it on that, but it feels like the TV situation is 80% of the reason they're having lower attendance, right? I mean, it does become an out of sight, out of mind situation for fans that might love the team, but it's summertime. They can go do other things if they can't catch the games on a television.
And it's unfortunate because, honestly, this is my 18th season, and this is one of the most talented teams I've ever covered. It's a fun group. It's an interesting group. I know Pablo Lopez has struggled, but he's a fascinating dude who looks like he's on the right track right now to recovering his season and getting back to that ace status. And, Carlos Correa is an all-star. I know he's been hurt here for 2 weeks. Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee has come up and looked like the real deal at times. And the last couple of days at shortstop have looked pretty good themselves. And Byron Buxton's having a hell of a season. And when, close to 50% of your home market can't see it, that's a real problem, without question. The Twins need to get, it's very unfortunate timing for them that this team was not on air until, May 1 until Friday. They were on the verge of their 10th victory in a row on May 1st when the dispute kicked in and Comcast and Diamond went at each other. And it's funny because Diamond didn't want to go to a higher tier on Comcast. They were fighting for that. Comcast stuck to their guns, and Comcast got what they wanted 3 months later. And now it's on a higher tier that fans have to pay more for, which frankly stinks for fans, but also that's the way cord cutting's been going, a la carte, purchasing of idea, or like people were going to pay $20 to watch Twins games at some point, either this year or next year, no matter what. But now you have to pay for cable and that $20. So it's all a mess. And it's very unfortunate because the Twins, again, are a really talented team that, weren't that far off a couple days ago. And, it's not a really great couple days, put it that way.
One or two more for you here, Dan. White Sox in town on Friday, so for that convenience charge, you can hop back on Comcast and you can view it. Or, hey, why don't you go to the park? It sounds like good seats are available. And the Twins ownership group would appreciate you showing up and $9 beer night and hot dogs and all of that. But, Dan, I need you to help sell me some hope here because I'm looking at things. I got Kirilloff to the 60-day IL. Brock Stewart's hurt after the 4 runs or so that he gave up the other night in New York. We got Randy Dobnak back. I didn't even know he was still with us. Carlos Correa and the foot thing. Like, I need you to sell some hope in terms of this team getting healthy because ultimately the games still count. Season's still going on. And this team is in the wild card mix for sure. 6.5 games is starting to look ominous in the Central. Like, I need some hope here, Dan.
Yeah, look, there's still a great roster that was already in place. They just wanted a little bit more. It will be tricky that they have 2 rookies in the rotation the rest of the way, and the potential backups for that are more rookies or young guys, and until Chris Paddock gets back, and even Chris Paddock is coming off 2 Tommy John. So, There is Carlos Correa coming back soon. Royce Lewis is healthy. Jose Miranda's healthy. Byron Buxton is healthy. Brooks Lee looks really good, especially since they put him at short. He might be limited in range, but man, he looks good with the glove. They expected this position group to carry them and be able to score a lot of runs. I think there's still a lot of runs left on the table. They have a lot of home games the rest of the way. Pablo Lopez is really, I think his last 5 or 6, he's been like a 1.86 ERA. Maybe I'm wrong on that by a point, but he's been much better the last 5-6 times out. Bailey Ober looks amazing. Joe Ryan has been consistent. So there's a lot of good pieces. The bullpen is, Topler's going to be added in, and I know that Trevor Richards does not make people run to the box office and go, I need tickets right now, but he should help. And you still have Duran, Jax, Alcala. So there's a lot of things to like about this team. It's just a weird period where I think they're disappointed in the clubhouse, and fans are rightfully disappointed, just not, having that starting pitcher that they needed.
I dig it, man. Hey, thank you as always for being willing to join wherever you are in the country following this team. And we'll see you at Target Field this weekend, I assume, as you cover the White Sox in town. And, whatever happens today in Game 3 against the Mets, that feels like a get-right weekend at home. Should be fun. Yeah, absolutely. The White Sox, man, they had to drop the Sox from their name because they traded everybody yesterday. So it's just the Chicago Whites now. It's there's nobody left on that team. So they should be primed for a sweep, but it is not a great situation there either. So that is a good, fortunate time for the Twins to be facing them because they traded Eric Fetty, Tommy Pham, everybody. They're gone. Cheers as always, and we'll talk again soon. All right. All right. Thanks, Nordo. Take it easy, man. You too. Thank you, Dan Hayes at Dan Hayes MLB via X covers the Minnesota Twins. And it is not a rubber match at noon. It is simply the third game. It's a save face game. That's what it is. It's a save face game with the aforementioned Pablo Lopez on the mound today against Robbie Rosenhaus's favorite Metropolitans. And we're hoping that this Twins offense can figure out how to score runs and put Robbie in a bad mood, at least for a day, before coming home to challenge the White Sox starting on Friday. And you can watch it on TV again. But as you heard it, and he did his best. He did his best, but there's a hard selling hope these days for a team. And money here, not getting money there. The text messages, fantastic, by the way. And when we continue, we're going to jump back into some NFL nuggets, some leftover big deal, no big deal. Looking around the NFL, a couple of things on the Vikings as well. We're going to do that over the final 2 segments with Brett Blakemore here. I'm Nordo in for PA. And as we were talking about, everything's good with the host. No vocal maintenance. The voice is strong, and he's ready to rock. And boom! He'll be back in tomorrow, but we continue 9 to noon next.
Minnesota Vikings training camp is back. We'll be there each day with great prizes up for grabs, including KFAN swag, preseason tickets, and a signed Jordan Addison helmet. Stop by, find our Mall of America street team. Ask how you can enter to win. Don't forget the Mall of America mystery cards. Everyone's a winner. Get tickets to training camp today. Vikings.com/training camp. Vikings.com/training camp.
Twins fans, ever loyal, ever not predictable, but they always come up big. Text message machine, 64686. But they do have money. The Pohlads are one of the richest owners in baseball. Pocket protecting hard. And did the Pohlads file bankruptcy? I think they have a few bucks, even if the TV deal went sour. That's another one. They're the cheapest organization in all sports. Embarrassment to all Twins fans and all baseball fans for that matter. Once again, some scrap heap, washed up pitcher who was good like 5 years ago, even if you call him good. I hope they get contracted or swallowed up by the baseball gods. Just make them a minor league team. I officially am not a Twins fan anymore. Ooh, baseball's dead in 20 years anyway. Farewell, bunch of cheap bleep owners. That's John the mail carrier.
Man.
We got to get John back in a good mood because he's precious cargo, John. Okay, don't take this out on the mail. Okay, keep things rolling. But we love you and we love what you do. Twins weren't handcuffs. The owners are multi-billionaires. Worst owners in all of sports. It's embarrassing. Then the obligatory Fubo TV thing comes in. I'm not changing to Fubo. It's Fubo. Excuse me. It's not Fubo. Fubo is fashion.
Yeah, that's something else.
Fubo is entertainment. Fubo fashion. Fubo TV. Another one. I'm not paying a dime to watch this team either in person or on cable. Ooh. Twins are so close. They've done nothing but cut to take advantage of the position they were in. You're talking about a multi-billionaire owner. No one should feel sorry that they might have to shell a few dollars in to win. It's Greg in Lakeville. Oh, and then a fair question. Should have hit this with, where does Brooks Lee go when Carlos Correa comes back? When is Carlos coming back? He's coming back soon. When will KFAN call out Brock Stewart, another highly paid Minnesota ball player that doesn't play or pretends he's hurt every time he doesn't pitch well? Just do what I do, another one says. That was Steve. Another one, just do what I do and don't watch baseball. Jeez. Cheaper than the A's. Sentiment is well heard. I'm with you. And that's what they gotta figure out how to navigate that. I contend it's a combination of potentially moves that are not made. It's the messaging associated with that. And then ultimately, this team isn't raising enough inside the system and developing enough talent in totality. This is a talented team. I agree with Dan there. And this team can compete in the playoffs. But ultimately, there's a combination of those things. And the public sentiment is harsh right now. It is heavy. It is boiling. And the fans, for the most part, are right on this. Big deal or no big deal, something we were doing during the first hour. We did some Vikes Bites and training camp. Ahmad was great in studio during the 10 a.m. hour as we look at what's happening down in Eagan and programming throughout the week. I don't know if is Common there again today.
He is.
Okay, so
both of them are out there.
So Common, oh wow. Okay.
Common and Barrero.
So following our show, another text, are these texts you reading or are they Meat Sauce's tweets? That's
either or.
That's a fair question. I don't have his X account in front of me at this moment, but I bet there's some similarities there. There's no doubt. The natives are restless. People are angry about this. And for the most part, I do believe that they should be. The TV contract in the short term should be of zero conversation as it relates to what you can do also in the short term financially. Figure out the TV situation. These people signed a deal. In some ways, there's an aspect here of knowing that the milk had gone bad, but you signed on the deal anyway. So you were either going to take a short-term loss, making the transition to streaming, that was going to create a consistency and potentially a new habit that fans would pay for to have access. So you lose money now, building a platform for the long term, or you tried to grab a few more bucks out of the TV well, knowing that there was a high likelihood that we were going to experience what we experienced this year. Which do you think was the better option for the long term?
Not to mention during the offseason, when they cut payroll, they just publicly said it. There's like, yeah, we're cutting payroll.
Yeah, we're
too much.
Right-sizing the business.
It was almost like if they were ashamed of it and they knew it was a wrong thing, they would have felt like they would have tried to hide it, or do it under the radar because they know they should be spending more. Well, they were just proud of it. They're just like, yep, we're cutting it. Don't care.
Well, that's the other thing, though, is the Twins fans are trained. They know this. You can't hide this from them.
Yeah.
And the messaging has been so bad for so long that Twins fans, the antennas go up very quickly with this sort of thing. Back to the NFL, though. Big deal, no big deal. We are one of 32 teams. Handled a couple of bits earlier in the first hour, but you had some NFL stuff that you prepared, jumping back to the NFL, jumping back to optimism and hope in front of the 2024 NFL season. I do promise you'll actually get to watch all of these games. Where are we headed to?
We're headed to Hudson Bay. Stop me if you heard this one before. Aaron Rodgers snapped at his offense yesterday for a lousy practice. He was quoted. Teammates were quoted, I believe. I think it was Garrett Wilson. Don't quote me on that, but I think
they were seeing. I saw a video in which they were hammering it out on the sideline.
Yes, I think demonstrative was the word used to describe Aaron Rodgers on the sidelines.
Sure,
big deal or not a big deal that Rodgers is up to Rodgers things out in New York or New Jersey.
I don't think it's a big deal. I think that this is. I mean, we see this. We see camp fights. We see. I think that we're trying to make it a big deal because specifically after he skipped the mandatory minicamp because he was in Egypt. He was checking out the pyramids, which I'd like to go to Egypt at some point someday. But if I had a job in which I had multiple months of the year in which I had nothing going on, I might plan that trip to Egypt during that time and not during mandatory minicamp. And the great thing about Aaron is he's going to play semantics and word games, and ultimately he will never be wrong. But the idea that effectively minicamp has been reduced, or mandatory camp has been reduced to an OTA style light practice, and he was at the other one, so therefore this was okay. Head coach didn't seem like it was totally okay. And so I think, speaking of antennas being up, you're going to be extra sensitive to good times, bad times that happen with the Jets. But I don't think it's any big deal. I mean, Garrett Wilson, he just spent a year dealing with Zach Wilson. He just spent a year dealing with, Tim Boyle?
Yeah.
He needed to be lanced. I mean, that's what he was dealing with at the quarterback spot. He's anticipating a healthy Rodgers. This is a very good defense. This is probably, if anything, it's a big deal because it's a good thing. Aaron's asserting himself. It's business mode now. You watched him in Green Bay for years. You know how he operates.
Yeah.
He's going to get those guys right. And when Garrett Wilson has 10 touchdowns this year, he's not going to be worried about that time in camp when they were yelling at each other.
I just feel like it just escalated so fast. Like, I don't know, maybe this is just my green and gold glasses, but I felt like when I was a kid, I wasn't hearing about this stuff about Rodgers, and then it just slowly escalated as the years went on. But
you bought in for the his way or the highway, and it's going to be his way.
Yeah.
And his way, I mean, his way's been pretty good.
Speaking of his way, and also on Rodgers, shocker here, probably not. I think they put out a report, not playing at all in the preseason. They're going to be smart. They're trusting their instincts and not playing him, even though he's basically taken, a whole year off, essentially, of not getting in-game, actual live fire. It's preseason. It's not really live fire, but actual in-game reps. He's been doing it for so long. Big deal or not big deal that he's not even getting a snap, a look, a dress in preseason.
No big deal. And yeah, he's at this stage of his career, he is recovering from an Achilles. Again, does Aaron Rodgers draw my ire from time to time? Certainly when he was in Green Bay. Now how he's in certain spots waxing poetic about various worldview related issues and things, and there are a lot of things I agree with him on, some I don't. He's free to do those things. I'm not offended by any of it. But my point is that does he draw my ire from time to time? Yes. But if we can wipe away all that other stuff, the ayahuasca, the Egyptian pharaohs and sarcophaguses and things, if we can just wipe that all away and just say, what did they pay him for? They didn't pay him to do reps in preseason. He does not need to do reps in preseason. He'll be ready. And they open the season, I think, at the Niners. That's going to be one hell of a game. So he'll be ready for that, though. He is game for that. So no big deal.
Do we have a quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh? It apparently is heating up between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. The old saying, if you've got two quarterbacks, you've got no quarterbacks. I think they signed Fields with the intention, yeah, you're sitting, buddy. Like, this is going to be Russ's team, your insurance.
Well, wasn't Russ was doing like some things off to the side again? Is he up to his usual like shadow football antics? Remember when he would do that? He would like no football, no teammates. He'd fake the handoff, and then he'd get his hand positioning right, and then he'd roll out left to right. I remember I think he had a hand issue, and it was a primetime game, and he was out there like 2 hours before the game, just running through some of that on his own, and people were laughing at him, and Mr. Unlimited and all that. I think of the two, I would take. I don't know if there's a controversy. It just should be Russ. Am I wrong on that? So I don't.
Several reports saying Justin Fields continues to shine. He's ready for his shot, and Russell Wilson had a calf injury apparently that he's coming back from too.
Yeah, Well, see, that's the thing though. Is you can shine all you want, Justin. When Russ looked bad last couple of years with the Broncos, totally get that. Russ is still better than Justin Fields. I don't even see how that's a deal. No.
Want one more here?
Yeah, sure.
By the way, so no big deal on quarterback controversy?
I'm no big deal. Are you big deal?
I think it's a fun story to follow, but I don't think it's a big deal. I think Wilson will win out eventually. But entertainment value, big deal. Matt Stafford, he got a huge deal. Speaking of deals, they restructured, they revised it. He gets a $12.5 million signing bonus. He gets some other guaranteed stuff. But restructuring his deal to potentially get some more help out in L.A., a team who I see online all the time of, watch out for the Rams. This could be a comeback year for them. I don't know what to make of that. What say you?
Well, comeback year, did they not play in the playoffs last year?
I mean, they did.
They lost to the Kitties.
Correct.
No, here's what's interesting about the Rams, and there's not a ton of time. We'll break momentarily and then put a wrap on things next segment. I'm actually kind of impressed because years ago, well, not too long ago, a few years ago, they win the Super Bowl. But people like myself, I would be digging in that it was mercenaries. It was guns for hire. They spent all those draft picks on bringing in Jalen Ramsey and these other players, and effectively, people are on Kwesi about, not caring about draft picks. I mean, the Rams didn't have a first-round pick, it felt like, for half a decade. I mean, they truly leveraged every resource they had to win that Super Bowl that they won in 2021. So now, 2020 or 2021, doesn't matter. Anyway, 2021. The question would be is now that you don't have all of those draft picks, how do you rebuild this thing? McVay, post-Super Bowl win, people were speculating that he might retire. And I do believe that those speculations were all built upon the fact of cupboards are bare, dude. And how are you going to continue to bring this thing along? Aaron Donald, not getting any younger. And you are going to have to you're going to have to get rid of the Jalen Ramseys of the world. I think Ramsey's now I think he's in Miami. He's back in Florida. Former Jaguar, of course. Now he's with the Dolphins. But you were going to have to shed some of that high money talent, and you were going to have to supplement via the draft. And they had no freaking picks. And I must actually tip my hat to Les Snead, to McVay, to that group, because now they found one of the best defensive players in the draft last year. He's entering his second year. No more Aaron Donald, I get that. But this is actually a quality team, and Kyron Williams was a 1,200-yard rusher somewhere in that neighborhood last year. Puka Nacua in the 5th round. Cooper Kupp still has some tread on that tires. It has to stay healthy. Their ability to really come back from this, and now they do have draft picks. And again, they were a playoff team last year. And so I actually have to tip my cap to them with respect. Because I think it's big deal. They had to free up some money because Stafford's not getting any younger. I get that, and I don't even know who's behind him right now with the Rams. They had the Georgia cat, Stetson Bennett. I forget who their backup is though, because I don't think Bennett's the backup. But I'm just really impressed that the Rams have figured out, without completely falling into a half-decade hole, they're very game, and they're a competitive team in an NFC that continues to look a little muddy after you get by the Niners and the Eagles and the Kitties. Oh, my. Big deal, no big deal. Just chatting NFL on a Wednesday morning. It's Nordo in for PA. Brett Blakemore is here. Final segment. A shorty next. Thanks to Ahmad Hicks, Fox 9. Thanks to Dan Hayes, The Athletic, for joining me today. Heavy on the Vikings during the middle stretch. Some NFL nuggets sprinkled in throughout. Thanks to Brett for producing. Dan covering the Minnesota Twins. And, hey, you got Trevor Richards, so you're pumped about that. Okay, you're not pumped about that. That's fine. That's fine. We're gonna get through this thing together. I am pumped for the next 6.5 hours, though, because both the Grum and Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barrero, common antenna B, out of training camp. And, of course, Mr. Barrero and Mr. Gardsey out there as well. So 6.5 hours from Vikings training camp down in Eagan. PA is going to be back in the mix tomorrow. So he is... and he's loose! But no longer. And everything went well. So we're excited about that. We're going to have Ben Lieber in the mix. And then I believe Alec Lewis from The Athletic. So we'll be back in studio tomorrow. And we're on site at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center in Eagan on Friday. A Friday feast with Charch as training camp rolls on. Thank you for listening to The Fan. Thank you for the text messages. Good, bad, ugly, and everything in between. I just appreciate you being in the Fan fam. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the camp coverage here on your home for Vikings football, The Fan.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.